less you make this about yourself, the more you make it so that you're speaking up not just to keep yourself safe, but to keep the next person safe. And the next person is doing that for you, because a genocide is a genocide. There's no like, yeah.
Hey guys, TazzyPhe here. How is it going? For today's video, I'm going to be doing something that's a little bit like older style. If you guys watched my channel a couple of years ago, I did a lot of interviews. I would bring people on, ask them questions. And so I actually recently reached out to my friend Safana from the UK. The reason I reached out to her is because she recently did a short form series on her TikTok and Instagram. And I thought it was something that was really interesting. It was covering what's going on in Palestine.
You're afraid to put your reputation and therefore your power at risk because you don't want to say the wrong thing. You don't want to look foolish. What we will tell you that it's never been wrong to stand against war crimes.
And she talks a lot about communications, marketing, how people who are neutral, how it's difficult for them to feel like they want to speak up, even though there might be this internal desire to speak up. In our conversation, we talk about things like media literacy, collective safety. We talk about boycotting. We talk about decentering yourself and what that does, loss aversion. It's a pretty interesting conversation. So you guys should go ahead and check it out. This is a long episode. Even if you don't want to watch it, you can just unplug it in on your drive. And yeah, here it is. Can you share a little bit briefly about yourself, who you are and what you do?
So I'm Safana. I am what is now becoming known as like a communication strategist. Now I think is something that people want to call me. But technically what I do for my living now is a copywriter, which just basically means I write words for businesses with some kind of aim, whatever their business is, to tell you about a product, tell you about a service, to say hi to you, whatever it is, that's what I do. But the way that I got there, and I think the thing that is making this all possible, is that for the last 10 years, give or take, I've just been in media and marketing. So I've worked in media conglomerates. So I've seen the background workings of how media is traded, sold, attention is bought, attention is described and utilized and leveraged by different businesses to attain something. And started believing that all of it's very much by design. And so it's allowed me to figure out how to use that for good. So that's what I try and do in my job, really, alhamdulillah. And now here we are.
It seems like you have been kind of in the core of what a lot of us are seeing in the world today. A lot of what's like kind of driving social media, news, any sort of narrative that's out there, politics. I mean, I feel like everything can tie back to that. And what we're seeing specifically now with what's going on in Palestine, I feel like that's just coming out front and center, right? Like disinformation, the way media works, the way that we use words. And so as someone who's really well-versed in communications, media, language, I want to get your perspective. What do you feel like we're seeing right now?
So by we, I'm going to be specifically speaking about people, as I understand, people in the UK, definitely with confidence, I can say. To a certain extent, I can understand the US media landscape because it's quite similar in terms of its aims, I would say, and maybe foundation. And then following that, of course, like the other kind of Western superpowers. So France and Germany are also kind of coming out of this as well. So I just want to define who I mean by we. And as an audience fanatic, I feel like that's something I have to do. That's what I mean by we. The rest of the world I can't speak to. But what we are seeing is, to the best of my understanding, the mainstream media has always got an agenda, first and foremost. Like that's the context that we're living in. It never doesn't have an agenda. It always is trying to push some kind of narrative. And it just kind of relies on those narratives that are pretty much like evergreen, no matter what the storyline is, whether you're talking about the economy or another country or whatever. Like everything's kind of got a narrative that the mainstream follows. That's number one. And then now what we're seeing with Palestine and when it comes to like speaking about Israel is the media mainstream specifically contending with how do we pretty much sell a genocide. Like that's, if I'm being really like blunt and frank, but position it and hide bits and deny parts and be selective about what we explain and display on mainstream so that the bit that it is a genocide is not spoken about, but we pitch it as a war, or pitch it as a conflict, or keep doing the whataboutery. So we're seeing, really, I think, like, media contend with itself of, like, there's this reality that is undeniable, but how do we position it so that people go, maybe it's okay for as long as physically possible until something is achieved. And that's really what it seems like. For someone who's, like, looked at media and communications, that's what it looks like. If you look at any interview, if you look at any, like, dynamic of people trying to discuss this, the framing that they put people from one side versus the other, like, it's tried and tested. It's been done before, they're just doing it again.
I think you're right. And I mean, one of the points that's being brought up a lot is that it's not like whenever there's a genocide occurring, people are going to outright come out and say it, or the people who are perpetuating it they're not going to ever admit that, right? And even I was going down the rabbit hole recently and watching a lot of these experts who are saying, you know, even if people are not considering it a genocide by the definitions, these experts who are experts on genocide are saying we're very, very, very close. Like, it is, if this doesn't stop, we're there. So why do you think that people are having such a hard time speaking about the subject? And, you know, what are the barriers to, you know, saying this? Why are these things seen as inflammatory?
My simple answer is that that's by design. Like, that's on purpose. Like, generally speaking, if you find, like, a mass of people who fit a certain demographic or type or whatever coming up against some kind of internal obstacle, a lot of the time that was just by design, and it was just put there on purpose. And, like, that's just marketing. It's like everyone understands that, like, a Volvo car is a safe car. Like, you can't pinpoint the exact point in your life that you believe that. Do you know what I mean? But it's just like, that's just how marketing works. That's how communications works. That's how narrative works. That's how it works. That's just how we work as people. We need to put stuff in our brain in a specific place. This has been put in our brain in the place that, if you fit a specific demographic, that this is too complex for you to get involved in. You need to know more to even speak up. And there's just multiple layers where you could get stuff wrong and you'd look like a fool, and you could, like, risk your reputation. You'd look awful. You would be seen as borderline, like, promoting, like, terrorist agendas if you speak up on one side, and the other side is just kind of like blasé, like, you're allowed to exist there if you want. But there's this, like, vehement, like, dislike of standing up for one specific side. Like, and that's just been the way. Like, it's like you're seen as someone who quite easily could be ostracized. Like, that's just the understanding. It's not like there's no subjective or, like, value judgment on that. I'm just telling you that's just where it lives in people's brain. Like, they're just like, yeah, I don't really know enough. Like, but again, if you look at the messaging, that's not an accident. It's very much by design. It's very much people who've been exposed to a certain kind of media have exactly the same understanding. The conflict lives somewhere specific in their brain. And this is just what we're just seeing, that's just being perpetuated, and they're trying their absolute level best to keep people frightened and not speaking. And that's the hot take here. Like, they're doing their best to keep you silent, whether that is with constant messaging, whether that is with genuine, like, legislation and outlawing and making certain things against the law, whether that is, like, demonizing certain rhetorics, criticizing you of having a certain, like, political agenda if you do speak up. They're giving it all they've got. Do you know what I mean? It's like, bah, 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 bah. Yeah. It's really, and as a comms person, you're like, I know that trick. I've seen that trick. I've seen it. But if you're inundated by it all the time, it's one of those things that I'm like, it's a losing battle. It's so hard for someone to see through that. And I totally get it. But humanity has to win at some point. Like, that's the other thing that we're contending with. But yeah, I totally get it. Like, I get the avalanche of, like, comms is undeniable. Like, at some point, someone is going to be like, okay, Coca-Cola must be delicious. Like, you've seen the advert enough times. Like, that's just how it works. That's how it works.
Are there certain marketing terms or communication terms that kind of come up to you when you're seeing all this? Like, something that maybe, like, people in that industry would be, like, really familiar with, but, like, the general public doesn't know, like, hey, this is called this is called that.
Yeah, so one of the main things that they're doing in their communications is something called loss aversion. They're trying to make you believe that speaking up will make you lose something necessarily. Like, that's really the whole thing is like, how far can we figure out what these people have to lose, and then we just put in like loss aversion messaging, whether that's like, and it's not like, oh, you're going to lose your house. It's like, you're going to lose your reputation, you're going to lose your like social standing in your job, you're going to lose your ability to get hired next, like that. The loss aversion in speaking up is insane, and that's called loss aversion, like technically. But like in real life, that is just kind of like people going, I just don't know how I feel about it talking in the office, you know, because that's literally all that is. And that's all they needed to get to you. That's all they needed to communicate to you. And I can see exactly how they've done it. It's very effective. But it's like the real manifestation of this is like TikTok versus LinkedIn. Like what you put on TikTok, you'll never put on LinkedIn, because you'll be like, oh, I don't know if I want Josh to see this. And that's in there. Do you know what I mean? Like, and that's all it is. And you're scared to lose something. You're not. There's nothing else stopping you apart from that. You're not scared to lose here because you don't think that will harm you. But here, you're like, that's a no-go. And they've got you by the wallet, because that's loss aversion.
And this might be a little bit off the theme of marketing communications. But I mean, this is all related to politics. But I feel like it's kind of ironic how the countries who promote this idea of free speech, it's interesting how far that goes, because if you're afraid to lose your job or your academic reputation, or, you know, I know I can't speak for the UK, but that's happening here. You know, we're seeing that in Congress. We're seeing that at some of like the oldest, most prestigious universities here. And I feel like the whole system's dismantling, like before our eyes. Like we're just like, oh, this is all a lie. Like, there's no free speech. Like, this is no. Yeah. Like, you know, how do you feel like people can feel empowered to speak up? I'm
going to level with you. As a person of faith, I have difficulty answering this question as someone who's not a person of faith. And what I mean by that is a very specific thing to a Muslim to stand up for justice where you can, no matter the cost. Justice is justice. If I see an injustice and I have somewhat safety, or I perceive that I have the safety to do so, it is my duty. Like, the rest of it can burn, as far as I'm concerned, right? Like, that's the thing that we contend with really and truly as Muslims, is we go, I know that this is a risk, but I have to trust and believe that the risk is worth it if I am after justice. Like that, and I'm being honest with you, that's just how my brain is wired. So like when people are like, I'm afraid to lose my job because I work for people who are like pro like this genocide, I'm like, to me that's not like, I can never register that as a loss. Like do you see what I mean? Like it really baffles me, because I'm like, but then your income is based on the oppression of people. Like, so I really struggle to dissect those parts of me, and it's only because I don't know how to sidestep that. That's one thing. And I just want to be honest in answering the question, like, first and foremost. The other thing is you can take solace in the fact that there's something called collective safety. The concept of collective safety is that if you are speaking up, the idea is if everyone speaks up, everyone is safe. But because we've internalized individuality and fear of loss as an individual fear, we believe that we are the only people at risk. So if you speak up, other people have the safety to speak up, and they can't do anything to all of you. That's literally how it works. So the less you make this about yourself, the more you make it so that you're speaking up not just to keep yourself safe, but to keep the next person safe. And the next person is doing that for you. The next person is doing that for you. The person who's more senior than you is going to do that for you. And then that keeps going. We're all safe. We're all in the green. Like, that's the only way this can happen, is if everyone's in the green. And you have to believe that everyone is going towards the green. That's how it's working. Because a genocide is a genocide. There's no like, yeah. Like, think about it this way. In a couple decades to come, you're going to lie and say you were anti-genocide. Like, that's what you're going to have to do if you didn't do anything. And it's better to be the person who got fired from the company who was pro-genocide than to just keep working for it and then having to deny it. Like, yeah, just think bigger than yourself. Like, decenter yourself, and the answer becomes so obviously clear. Like, there's literal movies about people who have profited off of previous genocides, and they're always the baddie. You're being the baddie. Don't be the baddie. Just do the collective good. Do the good.
It does feel like sometimes you feel so like in the system. And I mean, even if we take aside the company thing, right? Like even just because saying I'm not going to buy from Starbucks is much easier than saying I'm going to leave the US because I don't agree with where my tax dollars go and I don't agree with what this country stands for, you know? I guess getting past that and just being able to speak up regardless of what your internal conflicts are. I mean, maybe that does make you strong enough to make decisions that are really difficult, but yeah.
I'm not going to deny the difficulty of the decisions. Like, that's something I won't, and this is what I mean, like, I understand the avalanche of information that we have been subject to and how necessarily it has meant that we're in the mental state that we're in. That's something I can't, and it's because the communications have been consistent and impeccable. Like, that's it. Because the fear that you feel is not real. Like, that's the best way I can explain it to you. It's completely manufactured. Mm-hmm. And the truth is, if your colleague spoke up tomorrow, you wouldn't be like, that's an insane person. You join them. So the only difference between you and a colleague is that they've overcome the internal fear and then they've gone, they can't get you all. That's how collective power works. You have to trust and believe in collective power because, again, you are standing up against a genocide. You're not standing up against something that's like, oh, blah, blah. So you have to be like, okay, this fear has been, you have to believe me that it's being manufactured because it fits their purpose. Like, it just fits their purpose. Like, that's all it is. If it fit their purpose for you to think that Russia is a goodie tomorrow, they're gonna start, do you know what I mean? That's gonna be a slow, but in the back of your mind, you're like, Russia's a baddie. Tell me why, babes. Like, is it all the movies? Yes, it's all of that and more. It's the same thing as your fear, but that doesn't make it true. Right. So if you then go, slowly but surely, I can do this. We collectively can do this. That's the hope. That's what you're trying to get to. Like, I'm not undermining how difficult it is. I'm just saying, if you could be the colleague that does that for the other colleagues, you just have to trust and believe there's more colleagues who want to do that.
Kind of going off of what you're saying, like not overcomplicating it. Like, it doesn't have to be, like, you just have to speak up, you know? You don't have to make all these life decisions. Just speak up, and whatever consequences, which, I mean, that's not what I was referring to. I'm not afraid of consequences, but it's removing that fear. Like,
if I'm being honest, be less selfish. Yeah. Like, that's what if we're being frank about it, we're told that, like, this is the be all and end. Like, babes, it's not. Yeah. Like, it's just not. You just have to believe that it's not. Like, it's not about you. And even if you lose, bro, like, you're losing for this month, you're losing for next month, you're not losing it all. Do you know, this is what I mean by the fear has been manufactured. Like, what are you actually losing? This loss aversion, this fear of loss that they have manufactured deeply instilled inside of you. Like, I brought it up for a reason. Like, it's a real thing, and I get it. You have to decenter yourself. Like, this whole me, nafsi. Mm-hmm. Get it out. It's not today, not on this one. Do you know what I mean? Like, 100%. Not today. Leave it for next one, maybe. Like, next conflict that is actually a conflict and not a genocide. Yeah. Maybe be like, all right, maybe two sides. It's black and white. Yeah. So, you're just, but I get it. But you have to do it.
I guess going off of all of that, you know, what can we do from here?
It really depends on where you are. You have to do your due diligence, is really the truth. Like, if you believe this is a cause that needs your attention, dedicate half an hour after listening to this to be like, okay, what am I actually doing? What am I actually boycotting? Who am I telling my mum to stop buying from today? Like, what am I crossing off the shopping list? What am I, like, you have to do that. You have to be like, okay, who am I sending an email to? I've got half an hour to dedicate to this thing. This is what I'm doing. So in the UK, the march that happened on the 11th of November, there was, humans are mad. When we want to do something, we will do it. So this is what I'm saying. You have to just decide you are going to do a thing, find out the thing that is local to you. In France, I think they crashed their economy for a day for not spending, and then now it's like the guy's like, maybe we should cease. And you're like, you should. So figure out what it is you need to do in your area, your city, or whatever, this message is too global for me to give you like a template.
Yeah.
This is your chance to be like, okay, I've got the internet on my phone.
Yeah.
Do it.
So basically figure it out. Like you have everything at your fingertips. Yeah.
Boycotting really works.
Yeah.
So please do it.
Yeah, and I've been seeing a lot about like being very strategic, like what you were saying, like what, you know, people are picking this company, and that's the company you need to focus on, you know, to make a big impact. So
boycotting diversity and sanctions is how the last apartheid fell. Like, honestly and truly, right? So you go, who's done this before? Let's look at a template. South Africa has done this before. How did they do it? It was through long-term boycotts. You can't lose your energy with boycotts. You need to keep it going because that's what's going to work, right?
Yeah.
And if it's strategic, and it can be, we could be way more organized now that we've got the internet. So figure it out. Like, there will be people who will tell you exactly what to do and you will need to do it. There are people smarter than all of us and they will be like, this is the way you need to do it. They've researched it to death. And they're like, this is how we're going to do it. And all you need to do is find that website and be like, got it, cool. Mm-hmm. Like, they've done the hard work. You just need to implement. So trust and believe in the power of the human collective. This is what I'm talking about. Decenter yourself. It's not about you. Figure out what you need to do and go and do it.
That's all the questions I had. Was there any remaining thing that you wanted to get off your chest or something that you really want to leave the audience with?
There's a couple of things I think people need to know that may, like I've said before, like light a fire under their arse. And it's that when I say this is all by design, I'm talking down to the date, right? So there are like graphs of the age groups of people who are apathetic, pro, anti, either side. And what you'll notice is the older generations tend to either be pro or a little bit more apathetic. And then that kind of decreases as people get younger, where the younger people have been exposed to such little mainstream media at this point, which is the main funnel that these people have to tell you their agenda and make you scared in the inside. That's what you're finding most millennials and people older are seeing or acting based on. When you look at that as someone who does strategic comms, you go, okay, like, look, for example, the way I have seen those graphs before is you go, okay, fabulous. That means I need to do my launch of my campaign ASAP because the people who I've got buy-in from, who've got the buying power are here. But in 5 years' time, 6 years' time, these people are going to leave their posts of influence. They're not going to be the main purchaser in the house. They don't have influence in the society. They don't have whatever. But at the moment, the people who are at the bottom don't have enough influence in society to do anything. They can't touch me. So that's what they're relying on. They're relying on the fact that the people who back them are the old ones who are too stubborn to change their ways. And we're too afraid to speak to these people. And the ones who are not afraid can't influence these people. Does that make sense? So it's staggered in age. And they've done this so strategically that they know that if we do nothing and if we keep giving in to the fear that they have embedded inside of us and the fear of loss that they have embedded inside of us, their win is inevitable, according to their logic. Because they're relying on our inaction, our action is the way to stop this. Mm. You overcoming that fear that we discussed is the hope. I don't know how else to say that. So you have to know that that's what they're relying. They're relying on your silence. They're relying on other powers that be to silence you and you to give in to that fear. They're relying on people who are more organized than you to de-organize you and to defame you, literally, to keep you stum so that they can carry out their agenda. That's what you're contending against. So you gotta.
You know, we had this whole discussion about us being programmed by media to think a certain way, and that people being afraid to speak up, all those people who are kind of neutral, being afraid of their reputation being ruined and whatnot. Could someone argue that Free Palestine and the other side of it is just a really great marketing campaign? Yeah,
you could. You'd be wrong. But like any marketer would tell you that you're wrong and it's nowhere near as strategic and it doesn't have the backing and it doesn't have the press, it doesn't have the PR, it doesn't have the people, it doesn't have the... Like, you could make that claim if you knew nothing about this stuff, and you could be like, Like, bro, I put up 2 videos and someone called me a known propagandist. If it takes 2 videos on Palestine to be a known propagandist, then there's no propaganda. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're talking about a people who have, or like, we're talking about an agenda that has got a script of what to say from 2009. And it's 116 pages or something absurd. If that is not a marketing campaign, I don't know what is. Like, that's a marketing campaign down to the communications on the ground. That's an exquisite level of organization that has got, if you look at who did that as well, that's not a person who's cheap by the hour. That is a comms specialist who will, to churn out 100, bro, I charge P's to churn out like 4 pages, yeah? 116 pages is a lot of communications. That's a lot of research. It's a lot of audience demographic. And again, if you look at it, it is just to keep the neutral. Like, look at the comms. It's not to persuade someone who's pro-Palestine that genocide is correct. It's not to persuade someone that settlers are on the right side of history. It's just to keep people numb and neutral and be like, it's no point. Actually, they're all fine. There's 2 sides. It's confused. Like, it's to keep that preamble going. And again, if you want it in the most basic terms, you understand the Israeli side. You get it. They're just settlers. You want them to die. You're anti-Semitic. You know their slogans. You know whose else slogans you know? Nike. You know why? Because they're paying for marketing. Like, there's no Palestinian slogan. The only thing they've got is please free us from this, please. Like, that's all they've got.
Yeah.
Like, it's just to please exist. Like, that's not marketing. That's just someone saying, let me breathe.
Yeah.
Like, it's not, you know what I mean? It doesn't take a genius to be like, though, there's marketing here, there's statistics here, it's so strategic. I cannot, like, from the construction of the place down to who is there, how they got them there, how they communicate that they have a right to be there, to the way that schools exist abroad to indoctrinate people in the same message, to figure out exactly how it is. The level of organization is exemplary.
And I mean that,
okay,
so you flying people out, like paying full paid birthright trips, that is, it's madness. It really is.
Bro, show me one other nation that is on that level of, and then come on, I live in London where, like, we've had schoolmates who we knew in year 10 and 11, they go on birthright trip, they come back a different person every time. You're like, another one lost, bro. like And it's insane.
Yeah.
Do you know what if we're being frank, like, you just go, yeah, they used to be all right, but now, wow, like, they won't speak to me. And you're like, what happened during those 5 weeks that they paid for you to be there?
Yeah.
But it's
like this thing clicked in my head because we were sitting and one of my Jewish friends was talking about birthright. And I didn't know that it was called birthright at the time. I learned that way later on. But she's telling me, I'm like, this sounds like a vacation. I was like, something is strange because, like, my best friend who's Palestinian, I'm like, but she goes to refugee camps to visit her family. Like, you're going there for, like, this sounds like a fun time, but, like, my friend who goes to visit her family is visiting refugee camps. Like, this doesn't add up. And then, like, there was another girl who wasn't my friend, but she, like, I brought it up. We had some sort of discussion, and she just starts, like, crying about her grandparents in the Holocaust. And, like, the teacher literally, I shit you not, okay? He was literally like, shh. Like, I was getting frustrated. I was like, yeah, but, like, I'm talking about this, though. It's just, like, when you see it, you just see how other people are just so, like, quick to shut it down. And it's so, like, unbelievable. Like, you're just like, is this really happening right now? And, the algorithm took me down the other side of things, which I've never really explored either. And when I watched the whole videos, I was literally telling my husband, I was like, you know, although this guy's wrong, like, I can see how somebody who doesn't have any context or any education on this would be like, wow, he's so right. But in the last video that I saw, and, you know, I'm typing and I'm just, like, doing my work and it's just playing in the background, I'm like, I had to pause and rewind because he said something along the lines of, you know, the British drew lines in lots of places. Like, look at India and Pakistan. The Hindus went there, the Muslims went there, and it was very peaceful. A lot of people died in mass migration. He said millions died in mass migrations. It was peaceful. I'm reading the comment section. It's like, thank you so much for this video. I'm like, what is happening? Like, are people stupid? Like, partition was not peaceful. And even just his sentence itself, millions died in mass migration. It was peaceful. Like, where is the common sense? But I don't know. It's, you start to feel like you're mad. Like, you start to feel like something is wrong with you. But anyway, that's my rant. That's my...
The ultimate gaslighting.
Yeah.
Because what it's making you question is your understanding of literal life, death, reality, by sometimes just minimizing people's struggles and deaths based on who they are, which is really quite a trip. Like, it's such a... Yeah, and there's a spectrum of the words regarding death. And, like, if we're going to talk about the news and how they're positioning it, you feel like you're going nuts if you're reading it, because you're like, there was a massacre at the music festival, but 4,000 children just died. So you're like, this was a massacre, but this was just a spontaneous death of 4,000 people. And then this isn't even verified. This is like, and this is being walked back now, the scale of this, but this has got photo evidence, video evidence, like
we're watching it live.
And a massive evidence that is now undeniable. And then they're going, but really, isn't it justified? And you're like, who? So I think, but I keep reading that there's no revolution without you a little bit losing your mind. Like, we must have to lose something. And maybe, again, I'm bringing too much faith into this, because I don't know who's going to watch. And we're doing this as people of faith. And I have to try and make this, because I know very much who I'm trying to speak to. Like, I'm a media marketing person. So my intention is to speak to the people who are neutral. Like, I have no interest in speaking to you if you're already doing the boycotting. I'm being honest with you, because you're doing the work.
Yeah.
I'm trying to onboard people who are there going, Like, I'm trying to show them the light, because media literacy is what these people don't even care, because they're like, no, I know, I don't care. You don't need to show. This is who I'm trying to reach. So this is why I contend with, like, how much of my faith do I show them? But eventually I have to show them the whole thing. But anyways, that doesn't need, I'm just giving you context. Yeah. But you get this thing of, like, did you think that the demise of 10,000 plus Palestinians was going to be at no cost to the rest of the world? And this is where you go, like, you can do the strategy, you can do the charts, you can do the calculations, you can do the campaign analysis, but this is not a campaign. This isn't just some any block and land. This isn't just some strip.
Even in, like, non-religious discourse online, like, people who are understanding that there's, like, some things are changing, you know? What they are saying is kind of echoing that, and that we're going through, like, a shift in the human consciousness. Like, this old world, these systems that we had, you know, you're either trying to hang on to that. There are people who just like, I just want to go back and go to my, like, little bubble, and, you know, these changes are not going to happen. These systemic changes, this wealth distribution, all this stuff is not going to change if we just want to bury our heads in the sand or just go back to our little superficial world where other people suffer for you to have your little...
It's other people suffer for you to have.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that's the operative. This is the part that people are going, wait a minute. Like, am I the drama?
Yeah.
Am I the villain?
Yeah.
That's what everyone's doing. They're looking at, like, the UK has been saying that it's like the saving grace of every backwards nation that didn't allow free speech for so long, that you're now going, wait a minute, you're about to outlaw protests. We invaded countries for that. So are we the villain? Is that what's going on?
Yeah.
But again, as a person of faith, you go, I cannot in my Islamic brain comprehend that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would let this happen inconsequentially. Like, do you understand what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, when people are like, where is God? I'm like, God is doing it, bro. You're watching the whole thing. Like, you're watching it in real time. And it's now you go, let's humanity, come on then. Like, come, like, and it gets that deep, because you're like, and then we can say that this is related to Palestine, but people are now being privy to what's been happening in the Congo, the plight of the Sudanese people, what on earth, like, we have been doing there and contributing there is now coming to light. And we're going, wait a minute. And now people, without knowing it, are rehashing if one limb hurts, we all hurt. Like,
yeah,
they're going, wait a minute, oppression is oppression. And you're like, yes, like, You see? And then you're going, what? Do I have to boycott technology? You're like, yeah, what? Yeah, this is what we've been saying the whole time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and it's, yeah. And my only thing is like, can I get people who are watching the world go by in something called the first brain switch gears and be like, let me engage and discern. Let me actively try and figure out where I'm being taken for a mug by mainstream media because they think I'm switched off and they think I'm only after my stuff and they think I'm self-centered enough to not consider other people because that's what they're relying on. That's why they've put it in you. Because the more self-centered you are, the less you center other people's problems, the less you consider your impact on their life, the less you're going to change. And they can keep perpetuating this because it fits you just nicely. And if you're benefiting off of it, fabulous, like carry on. Do you know what I mean? And the more you get, the more you attain, the more you benefit off it. And this is what you were saying in the beginning. Like, I'm so ingrained in the system. But babes, the system collapses the moment we all leave. So where's the system now? As a person of faith, necessarily what is happening will never and can never be inconsequential. So if the consequence is a whole new world system and that's what it took to do it, then we go, this is the way, like, qadar Allah wa ma sha'a fa'al. Like, there's no way it's inconsequential. So yeah, new world system is the least that this could do because, bro, we're not talking about any land. We're talking about Palestine.
Yeah. And that's the end of our conversation. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I know this was a long one, but, you know, let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time. I got a couple of videos coming out, so stay tuned. Okay, stay tuned. TazzyPhe out. Bye.